If you Google how to study for the CCIE lab, you're going to get a bajillion hits of people suggesting you read these 20,000 page books cover to cover and know them like the back of your hand, and buy all this other stuff too. So I thought, this is crazy. I got to create a micro nugget, and matter of fact, I'm going to change the title right now. It's going to say how I studied for the CCIE lab, because that's the perspective I want to take. I'm not trying to sell anything. I just want to give you some advice that I wish somebody would have given me long ago when I studied for the CCIE. It took me 3 times to pass my CCIE, so I'm definitely qualified to tell you what doesn't work and then absolutely what works. First off, let me emphasize I am not talking about the CCIE written. The CCIE written does not make you a CCIE. Despite the resumes I see with CCIE and then 6-point font size written after it, they do not compare. To get your CCIE written, get your CCNP and sit down with a good Wendell Oldham book on passing the CCIE written and study away. I mean, it's literally just a big ol' multiple choice question exam. You cannot compare that to the CCIE practical. They are 2 totally different skill sets. So, okay, what does it take for the CCIE practical? The key word is practical, as in everything you do when you study for this exam needs to have a practical slant to it. When I was studying for the CCIE, the #1 suggested book, matter of fact, I think it still is today, is Routing TCP/IP Volume 1 and Volume 2 by Jeff Doyle. I do not suggest that book for studying for your CCIE. Man, even saying that is such a highly recommended book. Like, I'm turning around looking for a man with a knife, like, you will never speak again, Jeremy. Like, that's the kind of feel. And I've met Jeff Doyle. I've been interviewed by Jeff Doyle. That guy is amazingly smart. He can melt people with his mind. I saw him do it to a cameraman. It's crazy. But this book is good if you want to know what bit in the header gets flipped when OSPF is communicating to its neighbor and wants to signal something that the other neighbor needs to know. That is not what you need for the CCIE practical exam. Practical exam. Matter of fact, let me show you the #1 book that I used when I studied CCIE Practical Studies. I know it's old, but so is Routing TCP/IP Volume 1 and Volume 2. CCIE Practical Studies is literally lab after lab after lab after concept, where they show, here's the scenario you want to accomplish. Try it, see if you can figure it out, figure out the steps. And then the author literally goes through step by step and says, okay, step 1, this is kind of what we need to be thinking about. This is this scenario. This is how the technology works, and this is why we want to do it this way. And bam, there's the commands that you need to accomplish it. That book is gold. Will there be concepts on there that's not tested anymore? Absolutely. Technology does change. However, OSPF hasn't changed for decades. BGP has remained the same. A lot of the core is still there. From there, once you've gone through that book, practice lab, you get the concept, right? That's all, folks. It's just practice lab after practice lab. Grab a bunch of practice lab from a reputable vendor. How do you know what's a good one? You'll know it because they'll have the scenarios that you have to practice. They'll have the answers, like what commands to type. Then they'll have, and this is the key, the explanation of why those answers are there. When I first started studying for the CCIE, I would do those practice labs, and I'm just like, I have no idea how to do this. And I would just start reading them. I'd look at them. I'm like, oh, okay, so I see how he. Okay, I didn't get that. Let me Google that, or let me look that up in some books and see why. I don't understand that explanation. So I'd start learning just by saying, getting approached with. I mean, think about the real world. I mean, how often you get thrown into a situation where you have no idea. You're on Google, you're on tech support, and then finally you figure it out, and you're like, oh. It was that easy if I would have only thought about it this way. That's what going through the practice labs help you learn. Now as you progress, you'll literally just start reading practice labs to see, how somebody approached it. Then as you start gaining confidence, start trying them on your own and keep working through them until either A, you're like, I totally get this. Like I could do this concept blindfolded, or B, you've tainted the exam. You've tainted the practice lab. How do you know when it's tainted? When you see the scenario and you've done it so many times that the commands to type in just come to your head. That is a dangerous place to be because it makes you feel really good. You're like, man, I'm the man. I just, it says configure OSPF for area 51, and I'm like, I just type in the commands. It is not good because you've just memorized the commands. Memorizing commands is not what you need for the CCIE lab. They're going to throw all kinds of whacked out, non-best practice situations at you, and you've just got to figure it out using your ninja-like skills of practicality. That is it. I know it's like, but what about the boot camps and the eBay equipment and the books and the yeah? I mean, there's a lot of stuff, but I'm telling you, when it comes to this lab, simplicity is best. You just need a lot of nitty gritty hands on, and that alone is hard work in itself. Just getting that quantity of practical hands on experience is difficult, and even with all that, you may not pass the first time. I've got to say, when I went the first time, well, first time I don't even count. It was right after I got my CCNP. I had no idea. I had never even seen the equipment before, and there I was, and I got annihilated. But the second time, I went a year later after a year of study, and I walked in feeling good, and I walked out feeling good. And when I got home and checked my score report, I didn't feel so good. I don't know why I didn't pass the second time, but I went a month later, the third time, and passed with flying colors. So it's one of those things where there is a lot of dynamics that go into this exam: stress, weird scenarios, the version of, I mean, you could get into the psychology of this all day. I'm telling you, at the core of it all, you just need a ton of practical experience, and you're well on your way to get there. Well, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for reviewing.